Good afternoon. Today is Wednesday, December 29th, 2021, and this special meeting of the Romulus Community Schools Board of Education is called to order at 12:06. Madam Secretary, if you would please call the roll, and for those board members joining remotely, please state your location for the record. Thank you.
Bergeron. Terrell.
Plymouth, Wayne County.
Lester. Piles.
Here, Lynchburg, Virginia.
German.
Present, Romulus, Wayne County.
Kennard. Kennard. She's connected. Evett's present. Ms. Kennard, can you hear us?
Here, Wayne County, Romulus, Michigan.
Thank you.
We have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Today, the item on the agenda is one action item, a hearing for the termination of the superintendent. We had begun this on Monday, and we tabled further discussion and decision until today. So we're here today. Mr. Schindler, I know that you had not had time to review the documents that Mr. Ramel had sent on Monday, and now you have, and I trust that each board member has reviewed those as well. So I will at this point defer to you and Mr. Ramel, simply because I don't know, do we just start discussing as a board this, or were there points that either of you wanted to bring out that weren't covered?
It was my understanding that the board was just going to continue its discussion. I have not prepared any points, and it was my understanding that the purpose was for the board to have the opportunity to review all the documents and then continue discussion today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ramel, did you want to share anything before we begin?
No, I appreciate the board's having reviewed the documents that I compiled and sent over yesterday evening, and unless you have questions, I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions from board members or any comments now that everyone has had time to review the documents?
Madam President,
Ms. Wester?
we were able to review Monday's documents, but you had also stated that we were going to do this today so that Mr. Ramel had a chance to send in additional documentation yesterday. We didn't get that documentation till this morning at 8:17. So I've not had a chance to look at that, and also Mr. Schindler just sent something else out about 10 minutes to 11 that we've not had a chance to review.
Okay, so I would ask the board to discuss those items that were brought to us Monday that we were not able to review prior to Monday's meeting, and bring that discussion now.
Real quick to that point, President Biles, the documents from Mr. Ramel were sent to me yesterday evening. As I mentioned before, I'm out of town with my family, and I didn't have a chance to forward those along to the board until this morning. I did forward along this morning. In addition, the other documents, just to put on the record, that were being referred to is that I had also forwarded the documents that Mr. Ramel had provided to John Gierek at Clark Hill, who did the initial report, and Mr. Gierek provided a response to me this morning that I forwarded along to the Board of Education.
Thank you. Regarding the documents that Mr. Ramel provided Monday night, are there any issues related to those that board members would like to address?
Madam President, there was a couple of things that I noticed that was incorrect. A couple of things that included Mike Dixon. It was stated that he was given like $1 million for his services, and that wasn't the case. It actually appears that this was something that he asked for in the minutes for us to approve for the district business as opposed to his wages. So I want to make sure that that is clarified because I don't think that that's accurate.
Yes, thank you for that, Ms. German. And for the public who is joining as well as board members, at Monday's meeting, there was a statement made that the district that Mike Dixon had earned, or the district had paid Mike Dixon $1 million, and then there was something about and $2 million to Sandy Gutenschwager. So I do want to make sure that we state on the record that actually what was being referred to was the board approved bills for payment submitted by Mike Dixon and Sandy Gutenschwager. And the board, before we approved those on the consent agenda, we received the check register. And so those bills were that total that we received for those votes were for the regular accounts payable vendors that we normally have. And that would have been submitted by the former interim finance director, the former finance director as normal business. So those weren't amounts that were paid to those individuals. So thank you, Ms. German, for clarifying that. Is there anything else that anybody would like to clarify?
The hand is raised.
I'm sorry?
If I may, President Piles,
Yes.
on that point that Ms. German raised, she is correct. I learned since the meeting that those were not all monies that went to Mr. Dixon. Mr. Dixon's rate was $150 an hour, and that may, and I don't know the amount, but you are correct, Ms. German, it all was for bills.
Thank you. Thank you.
I did say yesterday that, or the other day, that there might be some things factually I wrong just because of the time crunch, but
Sure, absolutely.
I appreciate the correction on that one. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that has anything?
President?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you what, I'm going to get right to the matter, okay? This isn't about what he did, she did, or this. This is a witch hunt by you and Sue Evans and Judy Kennard on getting rid of the superintendent. Okay? I watched this meeting the other night, Monday night, and you and the president and Sue shuffled papers all night long, like two nervous wrecks. Okay? It looked to me like there's an obvious problem here with collusion with you two. And that's horrible. This district is hurting because of you. I went through the legal bills, Ms. Kennard, for the last 4 months. Every line item has you and Sue Evans's name on that. Over $50,000 worth of bills. And then when the superintendent came in and wanted to have help in the accounting, Sue Evans says to me, "Oh, no, we can't afford that. I'm tired of building up the home office." I'm thinking, what in the heck is going on? And I come up here, and now most of you aren't here because I wanted to look you right in the face and say, you know what? You're doing this city a disservice. You're doing the city a disservice by doing what you're doing. This superintendent came in, okay? He came in in what, November of last year. By the time he had the audit, it was February. Okay, I did my research, and they're saying no way in heck, by the time he had to leave for his heart operation, that he could have had the finances put together, especially since you guys wouldn't give him any money. You wouldn't help him. Okay, now all of a sudden it's his fault all this stuff is happening. It's not his fault. You were here, Miss Piles. Miss Kennard was here. How do you let stuff go? You know, you got 2 superintendents now. You got another one that you're letting go. Okay, it's another lawsuit, but you don't care about that. Well, guess what? Even though you may have insurance for it, your rates are going to go up tremendously, or we may even get dropped. But you don't care. It's not your money. You don't care. I've been on this board for 6 months, and not one damn thing has been said about the kids. Not one thing has been said about kids. It's all about you and about the finances and how things are being wrong. Fix them. Fix them. Don't go and hire all these yes people that you have out in the industry, like this Dixon guy who has never come in here and given us a report on paper. He's always been running his mouth. I don't care to hear him run his mouth. Okay, the bottom line is you want Ben gone so that you can have control. Debbie, you are not qualified to be a superintendent. You're not qualified to be an administrator. Period. Period. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to run everything and you're not qualified.
Mr. Bergeron, do you have you in your email seen the copy of the list of charges against Dr. Edmondson and the documents that Mr. Rommel sent the board with the rebuttal and the substantiating documents? Have you
With all due
received
respect,
those?
yes, I did see them, and you know what? They're fabricated. They're fabricated by you.
So, Mr.
Your
Bergeron,
influence on them
Mr.
is
Bergeron, I am
horrible.
glad that you have seen them. So right now, that is what we are.
Well,
we are
and right now,
discussing.
you're absolutely wrong. You're absolutely
Okay, so
wrong.
Mr.
You keep on
Bergeron,
wasting
right
money.
now, Mr.
No,
Bergeron,
you're not
right
gonna
now,
filibuster me. I'm gonna filibuster you. I had the floor, you're jumping in. I'm
No,
tired
Mr.
of you
Bergeron,
doing this.
You are out of order.
You're out of
Right
order.
now, we
You're
are
out of order.
discussing the
I have the
charges and
floor.
the rebuttal of them. This is not a time for opinions. Please refer to.
It's not an
specific
opinion, it's a
charges.
fact that you are trying to run the school district and you're not qualified.
Have a productive
You're not
discussion.
qualified.
We are here to look at facts, not
Yeah.
attack each other or.
No,
voice
no,
opinions. So I
Debbie,
would ask
you've been
please-
attacking Dr. Ben, and Sue have been attacking Dr. Ben for the last 6 months, and yet all of a sudden, this isn't about that. Baloney. Baloney.
And Dr. Edmondson was hired in August of 2020, not November.
Whatever.
Just so you know.
Whatever.
Are there, Mr. Bergeron, regarding the charges you read in the rebuttal documents, is there anything related to that that's factual that you would like to share or ask questions on?
Anything that I brought up, is it factual that you're on every bill from the lawyer's office since Dr.
Okay.
Edmondson went on
So,
administrative
Mr.
leave?
Bergeron, we
That
are
you're a part of
discussing
every bit of
charges
it?
and rebuttal.
Don't
Okay.
you see don't you see what's going on here? You're trying to
Okay,
do a power struggle and you don't have it.
Mr.
You don't have the
Bergeron,
power struggle.
There's not a charge against Dr. Edmondson.
It is too,
regarding
Debbie, you've been
the-
saying it's not against Edmondson all the time, and now all of a sudden we're in here in special
So I-
meetings over the
so
Christmas
I have some
holiday.
questions. Mr. Bergeron.
We're
do you
over
have
here
any
on a Christmas
regarding
holiday
charges?
because of you and your ego.
Mr. Bergeron,
It's
please,
ridiculous.
order.
You're ridiculous.
Okay, so let's stick to the facts. Board
Well,
member
I am
did have-
speaking to the facts. You don't like the facts. You don't like the facts because you keep on telling us time in and time out, it's not about that. And then it turns around and it's exactly what we've been advocating. And you sit there and lie week in, week out. Week in, week out, lie, lie, lie.
We are reviewing the charges and the documents provided by Mr. Rommel. If you do not have those, please let me know and I will forward those to you now.
I don't need them. I don't need them. A witch hunt's a witch hunt.
Okay, so for those board members who want to look at the documents, I'm looking at the statement provided by Dr. Edmondson. My questions were, on the first page, it states that a corrective action plan was after the district received the 2019-2020 audit, that corrective action plans for the 14 findings were developed, and that Dr. Edmondson communicated expectations and addressed the matters with the entire finance team. What I did not see, Mr. Ramel, was any documentation stating what those expectations were, and were there, the corrective action plans were developed with the auditor, but I didn't see like any status updates, and I know we requested those prior to June 30th, since those were the due dates. So what exactly, based on the 2019-2020 audit, what were the expectations that were communicated? And in addressing the matters with the entire team, what specifically did that constitute? Because I know the board did not receive that. So that would be my question. And why was, if there were the corrective action plans and communications were, or expectations were communicated, why was there no progress on those corrective action plans? Because the pre-audit status report showed in August of 2021 that only one finding had been corrected. So is there any further substantiating evidence other than those general statements that CAPs were developed and expectations communicated?
Well, let's unpack that. You know, as we discussed the other night, there was there was a meeting with Dr. Edmondson and the auditor and Ms. Rudolph, where he stated his expectations with her. He prepared then a corrective action plan for her that was not communicated because of her complaint at the advice of counsel. In terms of his meetings with the teams, you'll find, and I believe I provided many letters of people who were in on those meetings, Ms. Claire, for example, Mr. Sovi, and members who he said those 14 points were a priority, that they needed to take care of those. I know that I believe it was either Ms. Wooster or Ms. Terrell at the meeting the other night, that the board was briefed about his concerns about golf back in the fall of 2020. In terms of documentation, I don't know. I don't know if there are minutes of those meetings. I cannot answer which your overall question, why those material weaknesses were not all completed. The you have there were complications from the many resignations here. There were complications from the not filling positions, hiring a consultant against Dr. Edmondson's wishes when he was on medical leave, and the consultant who seemed to be more interested in finding fault rather than solutions, frankly. And other than that, I do not have any document, very short time frame, that states exactly what was communicated to those folks, and I would have to leave those to others. And again, and I'm just going to say one last thing. These were questions that should have been addressed to Dr. Edmondson if the investigation had had the courtesy of including.
Right. So, and I would like to speak to that, because I know there's been confusion among stakeholders as to why Dr. Edmondson was not interviewed for the independent investigation. So I want to clarify The board voted to have a forensic audit done. And we were doing a forensic audit, believing that, we knew we had to identify areas that needed to be improved. And so that's why we were having a forensic audit done. We had, Bill Edwards was conducting that, but Miller Johnson was acting as the middleman because we wanted to identify those things, but again, to improve them. So going through legal was our way to do that. So for that investigation, I believe Bill Edwards only was requesting documents. He never spoke to anyone. Legal would request the documents that were needed so he could conduct that forensic audit. As that was being done, and as Mr. Dixon and Sandy Gudenschwager were working on cleaning up our finances, and as the auditor got in there and realized that we weren't ready to do things, that's when the recommendation to do an independent investigation into business office practices was brought to the board. Now that investigation was, information was retrieved from SMART, from our systems, from our ledgers, and that investigation was only finance operations practices related. So only those staff members who work in the finance department were spoken to. So that's why there was no HR interviews, superintendent, administrative assistants, because it was an investigation into the business office practices, which only involved the finance department. So I did want to clarify that, because there's been a perception that's been created that an investigation went on and we didn't, nobody thought it was important to speak to the superintendent. And the purpose of the investigation was to speak to the employees in the finance department.
And you know what? Your influence on that whole process is wrong. You shouldn't have been involved in it at all, Debbie. You sat there and used your influence with these people because they knew that if they blew in your ear, that you would give them all the business that they want. Okay, and
So,
it's
Mr.
not a
Bertrand,
fact.
what
You do
influence
not investigate somebody without, you do not investigate
Mr.
somebody
Bertrand,
without letting
what
that person
influence of
defend
mine are you
themselves.
speaking about,
This
Mr.
is not
Bertrand?
Russia. This is
You
America.
cannot make a
This
general
is
statement.
America. You don't know what you're talking about, Debbie.
What
You
influence?
don't know what
Mr.
you're talking
Bertrand?
about. You're
So you're just making a
delusional.
general accusation with
You're
nothing to support.
delusional, Debbie.
Okay, so
May,
there,
may I
there's,
please, Madam President, I do agree with Mr. Bergeron. I think that the investigation was not a proper investigation, that there were members of central office that were not in the finance department that were asked whether or not they would participate in the investigation. We received a letter from Mr. Bill Garland indicating that he had been requested. And again, in order to understand Dr. Edmondson's position, since you were reviewing those documents, asking questions of everyone except for except for Dr. Edmondson, who was involved with the investigation, there's a huge problem with that. The other thing I want to state is that we were fortunate enough to get a letter from Ms. Hazelette in the packets that was sent over, and she indicated in that letter that there was evidence of the disarray of the finance department, in which the inability to close the 2020 fiscal year, delaying the completion of the audit, preventing the filing of required FID reports, and resulting of withholding our state aid for 2021. Fiscal year. Dr. Edmondson consistently championed the need for change of the leadership in the finance department to the Board of Education with limited support. We would not support him. He made efforts to communicate with us from the beginning, all the way up until he was told that he was relieved from duty, paid leave of duty, and consistently saying that it wasn't about him, when in fact it is about him. And that's why we're here today. And I just think that I totally agree that what Mr. Bergeron has stated applies, because you were involved with contacting and having communications with Mr. Dixon. The only thing Mr. Dixon came in and spoke about, no formal type of presentation. He came in and threw verbally through insults and innuendos about Ms. Claire, who said that there was a plan, and who indicated that she wanted to come in and would come in to assist with processing things. So I just wanted to make sure that I made a emphasis on the letter that was shared with us from Ms. Hazelette, because it provides a larger picture of how he was working with central office staff to get past these hurdles, but how she highlighted with limited support. Every time we tried to bring something to us, it was shot down.
Because you have mentioned that Ms. Hazelett has shared that that he received notification in regards to there being an extension. Is that what you said?
I said that her letter talked about the state aid. We did receive a communication from an individual who talked about extensions. And I would have to go through the documents that we did receive, but I think a lot of this is your being appointed to the board, Ms. German. A lot of these communications, or what I'm stating, were actually communicated within open board meetings, what was going on. And in fact, it was stated from our finance director at the time that she would be working on it and things were going to be coming together and be presented after the auditor made the presentation. But again, because she filed a complaint, we weren't able to move forward. So it has been presented to the board. These are things that we were not in the dark about. How are we going to, what is going on, and that our state aid was being held up, and that they were trying to complete the required or requested documents so that we could receive our state aid. And in fact, we did. We received a report that the state aid, it was the first time that Mr. Sovey had ever experienced that type of communication concerning state aid. And they were actually talking about, we were not going to get it at all. But because of the proactive thinking of Dr. Edmondson and bringing in Mr. Sovey and bringing in Ms. Claire to move things forward, we were eventually granted that, but it was the same thing.
Okay, so Mr. Rowell, I do not believe that, I mean, if the audit is not completed, the state can withhold state aid each month until it is. But the state does not completely deny that.
Well, it was said that it was possible that it was actually said while we were at that board table that it was communicated that that was a possibility. And I remember thinking when it was presented at the board table, which it should be in the minutes, when it was presented at the board table, it was said that they were working with different individuals to assure that they would be able to make that, because there were several extensions in January, I want to say in February at first, but they were all, those extensions were delivered to us. We received that communication.
Do you have Mr. Sovey's letter that he sent to Dr. Edmondson on December 16th, and Dr. Edmondson forwarded to us? In that letter, Dr. Edmondson in an email told us, I hope you're hydrated and sitting down. And he attached the letter from Mr. Sovey talking about December state aid being withheld. And he specifically, Mr. Sovey stated in that letter attached to the email, Mr. Boone indicated that your state aid will be withheld until the district's FID and audit report are submitted to the state. So statutorily, the department is required to withhold state aid until
I'm
the
sorry,
submission is
Madam
filed.
President, I understand all of that, and I have reviewed those documents. I'm speaking to information that was delivered to us at that board table. That's what I'm speaking to. So we did receive, I did review that email. But I'm also speaking to what was given to us in presentations at that board table. He gave us really good presentation and actually provided slides and went over everything. So I'm well aware of that. And I'm speaking to the fact that it had to be extended several times. And it was communicated to us.
So I don't believe anything's extended. It's just everything is withheld until the audit's.
There were dates, maybe I should place it that way. There were dates that were communicated to the board
Sure.
that these extensions were requested.
Right, but just to be clear, like, I don't want anybody thinking that we were not gonna get it, and then there was intervention by anyone. This is the typical process of the state. I do wanna talk about the plan. We went back to, and point number 2, I'm sorry, page number 2 of Dr. Edmondson's statement, point number 3. He's talking about things that, he had done and things he made the board aware of. He states that he promoted Stephen Baker to accountant. I believe that Stephen Baker was already there under two or three former superintendent or acting or interim superintendents. He did mention that he offered to get a bookkeeper, but if there's a need for one, I reviewed minutes and board packets. I never saw that was brought to the board as a recommendation as an action item. So I don't know, and did we follow up with, I know that we did get one employee to come do bookkeeping. Did we follow up to see, like, is that all that was needed, or were there other things falling through the cracks? I know he mentioned in that point too that he saw that the manager of maintenance and custodians needed clerical assistance. And I do want to clarify that our manager of operations is only over operations and maintenance and buildings. Custodians are not managed by Romulus staff, but by Auxilio staff. And to date, there still is no clerical assistance for the manager of operation. And we talked about a plan. He made the board aware of finance problems, and he asked for support and never got board support. That continues to baffle me, because what supports was the board asked to provide? We got concerns, general statements about sweeping changes, general statements about what is the board willing to do, but not one time did we hear, here's what needs to be done, here's my recommendation, and I would like the board to act on it. So if you don't ask for supports, it is impossible for the board to withhold supports. And the first time that I heard about a termination plan was after the Title IX complaint was filed. The board had no knowledge that.
That is not true. I'm sorry, Madam President.
Okay,
I
the
have
board-
spoken to
the
Ms.
board
Kernard about it. We had talked about that at the board table. We have talked about it. That is not a true statement that.
Well,
there
are you
was an
saying that
issue.
at the board table, the superintendent made the board aware in open meeting that he and Mr. Gardner with Troon were working on a termination plan? Because I did not know that until he told me that individually after the Title IX complaint was filed. And I didn't even see the correspondence from Troon until well after that.
Well, maybe the reason for that is because he was working really closely with our previous board president. And I would imagine maybe he might even know some of that. But again,
And that's
because
what-
Dr. Edmondson is not here in order to provide those details, he's
Right.
not been allotted the opportunity to provide the details. But I do know that I did speak to him about it on a one-on-one, and I do remember that it was talked about where the entire board was present.
Okay, so what I'm saying is he may have been working with, and I assume that he was working with the other president, but what I stated is never was the board told that he was working with legal to develop a termination plan, and only then did he know that he had to do the individual development plan. When legal
President
said you
Piles.
can't just terminate someone, you have to give an opportunity for improvement. So in
But all
later,
of that came out as a result of that, Ms. just prior to Ms. Rudolph going out.
Ms.
okay,
All of that was an evolving type of situation.
yes, but what I'm saying is regarding the statement that board support was requested and never given, that is an untrue statement. Where were the supports
What do you
requested?
think you're doing today?
That was never presented to the board. Individuals knew, I'm hearing now, individuals knew that he was working on a termination plan. And now I'm reading in the documents that Mr. Gardner said, hey, you can't terminate. You have to give somebody an opportunity for improvement. You have to do an individual development plan first.
President
to provide an
Piles.
opportunity. So I'm surprised, one, why would I see financial problems in August or September immediately upon being hired, and then not want to develop or improve somebody, and instead just terminate them. But then legal had to say, no, you didn't have to do it. And I know in that statement, Ms. Kennard and I are mentioned as being opposed to discipline. I can't speak for Ms. Kennard, but my conversation with Dr. Edmondson is following a process. Discipline is not a bad thing in and of itself, but when you do it, there are processes to be followed. And the fact that this was being developed with an attorney without board knowledge, and one-on-one is just that's an individual conversation that doesn't constitute the board. And as I've stated, no supports, and I have poured through board packets, I've poured through emails. There are general statements about finance, but not once is there anything documented about a recommended action. It was never brought to the board to act in open meeting, and so that's simply not true.
Okay,
Whether
President
it's
Piles.
termination, supports, or whatever.
Okay, President Piles, this is Ms. Wester.
Yes, Ms. Wester?
This is Treasurer Wester, so we can put titles in place. I mentioned, and we've also stated, that there were board briefs where Dr. Edmondson did talk about the relationships, and if things did not improve, there would be other measures taken. As an employer, remember, we have one employee. Our employee is the superintendent. The superintendent is over all the rest of the employees as it stems from teachers, administrators, or whatnot. If as a director, as the superintendent, if he's having an issue, if I'm an employer and I'm having an issue with an employee, I'm not going to bring every single thing to the board. As that person's supervisor, I can come up with my own corrective action plan to go and sit down and talk to this person about when the time is right. I can also work, and he worked also with legal to make sure that he was doing things decent and in order. And before he can even issue the corrective action plan, he was he got hit with the Title IX charges because it was alluded to. He was giving us information in the board briefs of what was going to happen. He didn't say step by step, I'm going to do this on this day and this on here. He said the communication is not there. I am not getting the things, and I'm paraphrasing, I am not getting the things that I am requesting. So if things don't change, I will have to make other moves. And his move was to work with legal to get a corrective action plan in place to sit down and talk to Mrs. Rudolph about. And if at that point the corrective action plan would not have been followed, then there would have been the termination guidelines. You're talking about processes. We haven't even given him a corrective action plan to follow so that we can get the business office and the district going in the right spot. So we're gonna go this way for this person, we're gonna go this way for the other person. If it's gonna be done decent and in order with a plan, we need to give him his plan and stipulate the timelines. And if those plans are not adhered to during the timelines, then we follow other steps. But there has to be the plan. And I said it yesterday. I've been saying it. Since you don't see a plan, you've never seen a plan, let's give him the plan of what we want for our district and where we want our district to be. Set the time frame. If we say 6 months, we expect to see this, then there's a 2-month check-in, there's a 4-month check-in, and we take it from there. We got to do things decent and in order, because if it's not done decent and in order, at the end of the day, there's going to be more lawsuits.
Right.
We are too deep into day-to-day operations, and that's the issue when you look at these resignation letters. We've been too deep into day-to-day operations to whereas people weren't able to get their jobs done. They felt worthless, and they've stated it. We need to if we're gonna follow directions and you want a plan, we start off today as number one. This is a brand new day. Give them a corrective action plan and move forward. Otherwise, Pete Bergeron brought it up a month or so ago. If you don't want him here, do a settlement buyout of his contract and let him go. But the response was, no, we don't want to lose him, but now we want to get rid of him without any money.
So, Ms. Wester, I'm not disputing a lot of the points that you said, that we have one employee, the Board of Education is over the superintendent, and the superintendent is over all other employees. And he does not have to bring everything to the board as he manages his employees. That is exactly he did not bring all that stuff to the board about the finance director. And he did say other moves, and as you stated, one of the other moves was talking with legal regarding the finance director. I agree with all of that. However, how does that translate to he asked the board for support and the board did not give it? He manages all the other employees, including the finance director. He doesn't have to bring all the details to the board, and he did not. He has the prerogative to work with legal on a corrective action plan, even leading to termination, which he did.
Mr. Ramil has his hand up.
That other moves is a general statement saying, hey, we can't keep doing things the way we are, but I do not read, here's specific support I need. And the board wouldn't give support in telling him what to do there. Because
you never even came at a board table and asked him for specifics either, Debbie.
Just was necessary. If he needed to include the board in that and it required an action, at that point, we would know and we would either support or not support. That was never brought to the board.
It wasn't brought because you didn't get a chance to bring it. But at the end of the day, period, prior to Dr. E coming on, we never had board briefs that detailed about what was going on in this district. He was trying to be transparent, but I want to let Mr. Ramel speak because his hand has been up. Go ahead, Mr. Ramel.
Wait 1 minute, Mr. I need to say this. You said he never brought it to the board because he didn't get a chance. Since he never brought it to the board never had an opportunity to offer support or deny support, because you just said he never got a chance to bring it to the board.
You keep talking about Angela Rudolph, and in the board briefs, he was saying there was some disconnect. He kept stating that, and for whatever reason, Debbie, as to why it didn't get to the board first, and I said why it didn't get to the board because she filed a Title IX. I don't know what happened, what transpired, but like I said prior, and I'm repeating myself over and over again, is that there's information that's been come out prior to Dr. E coming on. I've always said there's been a leak somewhere, and it doesn't matter where or however. But whatever the reason came, he was telling us in board briefs he was disenchanted with what was going on in the finance department.
I
And
agree
then,
with that.
and
What
then we
support
got,
did
and then we got the Title IX, he got the Title IX charge, at which at that point afterwards, he was telling us what he was going to do. But how
I
can a
agree
person
with
tell
that,
you something?
Lester.
I don't know if somebody's gonna charge me today or tomorrow, and I'm writing up something and I wanna present it to you next week.
I agree with that. What support did he request that the board denied?
I can say one thing is not wanting to release payment to continue with Mr. Sobey. That's one thing. But again, because he's not here to provide the additional because he's not here to provide or respond to your questions. If it's placed in a documentation, I would believe that it's true. He's not a liar.
I'm asking the
He's
Board
a
of Education.
straightforward person.
I
And
know.
I
I'm
do
asking the
see
Board of
that
Education.
Mr. Romeo has had his hand up wanting to have input. He may
Thank
have a little
you.
bit more insight for you.
Please,
Mr.
Mr.
Romero, you have the
Romeo,
floor.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Terrell, President Piles. President Piles, you said something that I agree with 100%. You said, quote, "You can't just terminate somebody. You have to give an opportunity for improvement." You weren't, of course, talking about Dr. Edmondson. You were talking about Ms. Rudolph. But this is a man that I represent that you gave an effective rating to in the spring after the audit was released. You extended his contract for 3 years in the early summer. And I know the process of evaluating a superintendent. It is done. It is a very let your hair down session where you can talk about anything. If the board had concerns about his performance at that time, they could have been raised. And you also made the point that the audit was just an audit.
It was just
And
what?
it was a forensic audit, and it was not meant to be dealing with people. And I received a memo from John Gierak this morning that Mr. Schindler forwarded to me that stated, quote, "Our investigation was not focused on Dr. Edmondson or any particular individual. Our inquiries to district personnel were limited to getting documentation." So what you've done here is skip a step procedurally. I've represented employees for many years and many public employees as well. And the step you skipped is saying, "We got this forensic audit, Dr. Edmondson, and we have some concerns about it. Can you give us a chance to explain this? Can you give us a chance to provide documentation?" I pointed out the other day that you asked for an interview with Mr. Garland, who's the Director of Maintenance and Custodians, but you
No,
never
not
asked for,
custodians.
It doesn't matter, buildings and grounds.
excuse me.
It's, yeah,
He
maintenance. and
stated
operations.
that, he stated that in his email, but in any event, whether or not you did, I mean, Mr. Gierak says in his memo, we did make inquiries of district personnel when we wanted documentation, but nobody asked Dr. Edmondson for any documentation except for the credit card stuff I provided to Ms. Lusk, which satisfied every single one of those inquiries. The point is you skip that step of saying, "Dr. Edmondson, we have some concerns based upon this forensic audit. Give us a chance to explain what you were thinking, what you did, what documentation you have, what do you have to say about that? And if you don't like his answers, then you can move to terminate." Instead of, and then Gierak also said, "Our investigation was not focused on Dr. Edmondson." So how do you go from a forensic audit to saying it's your fault, we're going to fire you, without going through that step of investigating him and having a chance for him to be heard, just as you said, give them an opportunity for improvement. That's the step the board is missing. That's my concern as an employment attorney. And that's, why, we're concerned about how the board is proceeding. Thank you for letting me speak to that. Procedurally, that is my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Rommel. So the reason why Mr. Garland was interviewed is because the operations is part of the finance department. We used to have a director of finance and business operations, but that was delineated. And so the finance part and then the operations was separated. but the manager of maintenance and operations is also responsible for, purchase orders and reports directly to the superintendent. So that employee does have a finance component in their job responsibilities. And because there were purchase orders, when those were pulled from our systems with that person had initiated, that is the reason why they were spoken to. And the forensic audit, to my knowledge, the forensic auditor did not talk to any employees. I thought that was a protection that we had put in place. And what came of the investigation was numerous violations of law, other ignoring, disregarding both expert financial advice, board requests for finance reports. The investigation revealed violations of law. So that is why we are here today.
Would you please speak to what he stated? Why are you jumping? Why are we jumping from an investigation and then not allowing Dr. Edmondson for any corrective action? Why are we doing that?
So when we were talking about job performance with another employee, we are aware that corrective action is there. We are now talking about violations of law. We are talking about ignored advice. We are talking about now the Board of Education and having the fiduciary responsibility for the district, being made aware of this. What do we do? We're still discussing. This is a hearing.
Is it possible that these violations were already in place and he may not have been aware that there are violations? How is it that you're able to determine, because again, as we just heard, how the investigation process should go, and giving him an opportunity. Reports were asked for, because at one point I was on the finance committee, and when I was on that finance committee, multiple documents were asked for, and it became a thing where it was overwhelming because it was said to me through Ms. Claire. There's no way I can get these documents together and then continue to focus on working on the audit report and get all of these documents that are being asked for. That was even the subject of discussion within a finance committee meeting. I don't know why all of these things are being asked for. So how do we jump from the investigation? Don't get any input from Dr. Edmondson as to why he continued to work in the manner that he's working on, and not even give him an opportunity to correct it. You have your finance, you have your investigation, and now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's now about Dr. Edmondson and what he didn't do and what he should have done.
It's called a witch hunt.
And we
Are
all
you saying,
know
Mr. Rowe, are you
that
saying
it's prior.
that it is
Give him a correct
unreasonable
time
for
to
the
make the
Board of
corrective action
Education
plan.
to request finance reports, regular?
But it was the number of finance reports that were being asked for. And again, that was a conversation that we had in a finance committee. It was myself, it was Ms. Kennard. I believe Ms. Evetts was not there at that time. There were multiple reports that were being asked for. I wasn't sure why those many reports were being asked. Ms. Kennard at that time said that she would look into seeing whether or not other districts were asking for the level of reports that were being asked for, and that we would readdress it. And then when it came time for that meeting, the meeting was canceled. It was canceled because Ms. Claire was, working on producing those reports and wasn't able to, because of the level of interaction that she was receiving from the board.
So I'm not sure. I mean, as a member of the board and as a member of the finance committee, what finance reports did you receive? We did not receive finance reports. And the board requesting those, I don't think that is frivolous or unnecessary. I think it is fundamental to decision-making to have reliable finance reports provided regularly to the Board of Education.
But we were asking for reports prior to even Dr. Edmondson coming on board about reports and things of that nature.
Which reports, Ms. Wester?
I'm going to sit here and tell you, a lot of these accusations and these charges, when you look at them, predate Bergeron, they predate German, they predate Evans. These policy, the procedures that have been going on, yes, they've been there. So we need to do the corrective action plan. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is just my personal opinion. I don't think Bergeron and German should even be a part of any voting if we're going to be talking about things that went on prior to Dr. Edmondson being here and prior to them being here on this board. We've all been working on things. They've been working, Mr. Garland has been working on procedures that he was told to do up under Angela Rudolph. No one wants to bring up these names, but questions were asked way back when I first got on the board about the finances and getting proper reports and things of that nature. And like I say, I'm just being straight up honest. I really don't think when you look at these charges, you talk about competitive bidding, some of these things were done before even Dr. Edmondson came on board. How is it fair? How is it fair to blame one person without, like Mr. Ramel said, we haven't even given him a chance to put in a corrective action plan. We haven't given him a chance to do it. And people, you know, we were in the middle of COVID. We're still in COVID. The numbers are rising higher and higher every day. And at the end of the day, when you have to make orders to make sure the safety of your kids and your students, we got to do what we got to do. I've spoken to other finance directors too, if things were done not following the bid process, there is a waiver and there are forms that the auditors can fill out and complete to right those wrongs because of the times that we are in. We are in unprecedented times as it relates to placing orders and getting the things in that we need. We talk about sinking funds. A lot of these projects were already on the books before Dr. Edmondson came into this building. How can we, once again, going back, due process.
So when we are, and this is a question for Mr. Schindler, for the board, to my knowledge, when there were concerns mentioned in board briefs about the finance operations, there was no violations of law, no illegal activity that was brought to the board's attention. And so in the absence of an individual development plan or correction plan, and nothing documented about processes or concerns with this employee, nothing documented. That's why I personally was uncomfortable. We're looking at violations of law, and which is illegal activity. So do you develop a corrective action plan for that, or can you look at those things and look at what led up to that and what opportunities were seized or missed or ignored?
I just want to make one quick comment because I see that a hand is raised. But again, with what Ms. Wester just said, I want to piggyback on that. There was a meeting that we had pre-Dr. Edmondson and wanting to tread very carefully because of other things that are going on with another superintendent, where it was stated in the board meeting that there is only so far I can go in open meeting because there is trouble. We also had within that same meeting a presentation from Dr. Harlan. There were problems. There were big problems. Pre-Dr. Edmondson, and quite honestly, I don't even believe that those things were communicated with him, again, with him not being able to speak, but there were things that a previous superintendent was highly concerned about. And that was someone who has been in the district for quite some time. That was someone who had been in the district and been sitting in the superintendent seat for almost a year. It was mentioned at that board table. So I just want to say that before we continue to go along the path, like, okay, these revelations of that there might be some other problems going on, it's not new. These are old problems that we've had for a long time, practices that we've had in place for a long time. That's all I want to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Piles.
President Piles, was there a question for me there? I
There was
apologize.
a question, yes, because Mr. Rommel was comparing general statements and board briefs regarding performance that was communicated to the board, but no supports asked for, no specific, here's where I'm going. And when we were talking about potentially doing discipline, it's like whenever anyone in the district issues discipline, then make sure it follows the process. And there was nothing documented on this employee. So those were concerns that we raised as members of the Personnel Committee. My question is when now we are looking at violations of law. So if there's violations of law and when there's illegal activity, is there still steps, or are we able to consider those items?
Do I understand you correctly? Are you asking whether whether a corrective action plan is necessary for violations of law?
Right. Or can we address the violations of law as an issue potential discipline?
Well, absolutely. The board can address violations of law as it sees fit. Obviously, a violation of law is different than simply a performance concern, and with any level of discipline, even if reviewing matters under a progressive discipline model, the level of the violation will modify the level of the response, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted clarification on that.
President Piles.
Mr. Rommel, your hand is raised.
I'm concerned about your statement that you've now made repeatedly, that there are violations of law and illegal activity. You need to be very, very careful if you are alleging that my client engaged in illegal activity, because that is not my understanding from the charges that he engaged in any illegal activity. And I think that you are going a little bit off script in saying that, and especially if you are now alleging that he engaged in illegal activity, you absolutely need to give him an opportunity to respond under law because he is a public employee. That is a requirement that you have.
So the question is the list of charges and the documents that were provided on behalf of the district. That it wasn't just performance-based. Are we able to address those or no? That was a question for our council.
And your counsel is correct. You can address them. My contention is the manner in which you're addressing it. If you're going to accuse him of something, you give him an opportunity to respond, and then you act accordingly. You took an audit that was not targeted at an individual. You then held an individual responsible by putting him on leave without asking him a single question about any of the findings, and he still hasn't been heard.
Witch hunt, that's what it is.
So I had another point that I wanted to bring to the board. Point number 9 in the rebuttal, where the superintendent states that regarding posting for the director of finance, he states, certainly I would speak with President Piles before posting a position. We know that that is untrue, because we know that board policy when either new positions are created or salaries are increased, it requires board approval prior to posting. And there were numerous emails sent regarding both, I believe, the curriculum and the finance director, changes that were made, and times where I had sent an email with board policy stating, here's our policy, please put it on the agenda for board approval, and requested just follow the process, pull it down, and that was ignored. So we know that no positions wouldn't be discussed. But he was stating that I have no plan to fill the position. It's the hardest one to fill. And the board was concerned that a month away from audit, not having anyone in that seat made the district even more vulnerable, which is why the board moved to hire Mike Dixon. And I also want to state point number 10 on, I think it's page 2 or 3, where it's stated that Mike Dixon was ordered not to report to the superintendent or to report to the board. I don't remember how it's phrased, but that is also simply untrue. Mike Dixon was hired by the board as a consultant on August 2nd. Dr. Edmondson, I'm sorry, was not on leave when Mr. Dixon was, when that contract was approved. He returned to work that day, August 2nd. He didn't attend the meeting, which is understandable. That was not a point of contention for any board member. But after that meeting on August 2nd, I immediately sent Dr. Edmondson an email informing him of the board's contract with Mr. Dixon and that he would be helping. And Mr. Dixon then attempted multiple times to communicate with Dr. Edmondson through email, and was getting no response. And other times when Dr. Edmondson saw Mike in the office and Mike wanted to talk to him, Dr. Edmondson actually told him, oh no, everything's good. We don't even need this. It's not necessary. Our finances are good.
That's hearsay.
So it's
hearsay.
Other emails where Mr. Dixon would copy me on it, asking a question of Ben, and I was copied, and Dr. Edmondson would respond, well, Debbie can answer this. But I was always clear. And even when he asked me that, no, he doesn't report. He's going to give reports at board meetings.
Because you're going to run everything anyway.
I'm working with you. This is a support that the board put in place.
No. You are.
Because that our finance department didn't just completely crumble right before an audit. The other thing that I had that I was concerned about was the statement that Troon was working on the property. And that they had been working on the real estate. That is true. And on October 20th, 2020, Troon attorney who was handling the real estate on Merriman, it was Brennan Ackerman at that time. He's not with us now, but he was handling that. And he sent an email to Dr. Edmondson informing him that the intent to purchase the document that we had was not legally binding. And he sent through a purchase agreement that the board would need to approve, and that would be the legally binding document. And that was October 20th of 2020. Board approved it, both parties signed it. The tenant moved into the property on November 1st. Yet when we got to April and there was, I don't know, $8,000 or $9,000 of unpaid rent, utilities by that point, and the district still had not received the $65,000 down payment that was due by February 1st. Questions were asked by board members in open meeting, and there was pushback about collecting money due to the district. So at that time, I reached out to Ms. Lusk, which is within my ability to do so.
No,
I sent the contracts and I asked her about, as far can we enter the property? Because we were told that, oh, they've done $200,000 of renovations. Then we found out that they hadn't. So yes, I got a legal opinion from her, which I shared with the board. And after I shared that at, I believe it was a May meeting, Dr. Edmondson stated, well, we really don't know which purchase agreement is binding. Maybe it's the signed one, maybe it's the unsigned one. So the board said, okay, we want the superintendent to reach out to legal. So the superintendent reached out to legal, to Troon, and you know what? Brought back the same opinion that Troon had given us in October of 2020, the same opinion that Ms. Lusk had given us. So there was not conflicting legal advice. It was all the same advice that hadn't been adhered to. And by the time Dr. Edmondson told us that, yeah, we'll just evict, we were in arrears, according to Ms. Claire. I have to look up these documents, but they were like over $90,000 in arrears of uncollected rent, uncollected utilities, and we still don't have the deposit. So, and the board not only brought this to the attention of the superintendent and the entire board, but there was deliberate pushback to collecting monies due to the district per the agreement, not Debbie Piles, not half the board, a binding contractual agreement. Pushback to collecting that money. And what we were told is, you know, if we don't stop, we're going to lose a sale. We're going to be sued for harassment. How is asking for the money due for terms of a contractual agreement harassment?
President
And what we
Piles.
were told was, if we're in a position to help someone, let's just help her. She's a good person. That is fiscal irresponsibility. They're still in that building today.
President Piles.
$650,000 sale. And we were told that that money was supposed to be part of what subsidized our weight room. We voted on a motion. Here's this amount we're going to spend on the weight room, and the money is going to come part from ESSER and from the sale of Merriman. Merriman's not going to be sold to the people who are in it. They don't even pay their rent on time or utilities, and they still have owed $65,000 since February 1st.
President Piles.
Yes.
So there's been conversation about, or comments about a correction plan.
I'm sorry?
There's been comments about creating a correction plan, putting one in
Yes.
place. My question, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. How do you turn about not legal purchases? How do you set a plan in place for that? How do you correct this? And this is for Mr. Schindler. When you first started your presentation on Monday, you quoted one of our policies and how the ultimate responsibility. Could you please reread that on who is ultimately responsible for the financial responsibility of this district?
I don't have that in front of me right now, but I know I referenced the board policy, and the board policy asserts the superintendent is ultimately responsible for that.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
it's 20 minutes after 1. I'm not going to stay here all day and listen to it, like 6 hours the other day, and, you know, these meetings are ridiculous. This is a witch hunt. If you got your, all I say to you is if you get rid of the superintendent, pay him, because he'll have enough money saved up, so when we get rid of you, okay, we'll bring him back. Because that's what the community's telling me they want to do. They want to bring him back. And you guys, you don't have a clue. People come to you and tell you that, and what do? You hire these cheap guards to come in here and protect you. Oh my God, I can't believe this.
We got security here
You've got
today.
so much,
Why?
You got so much money, okay, and yet you're so concerned about money. This is ridiculous. Do what you have to do and what you're gonna do, and if you gotta get rid of the superintendent, pay him off, pay his contract, because you just signed a new contract with him, okay? And then, within the next 2 years, we can get rid of you four, and then we'll be able to bring this community back. But hopefully we'll be able to bring it back, because, you know, God only knows. So anyway, you got 40 minutes.
They don't want to buy him out. They want to get rid of him with no money.
Yeah.
Because of the fault of other people, of what he inherited.
Okay, sorry, are there any other questions or comments on the charges or the rebuttal?
I have a comment on the charges as far as the real estate is concerned. There were legal opinions going back and forth, in which I believe the tenant's legal counsel did send emails to us indicating we were going to be sued. And again, Dr. Edmondson was communicating with the district's counsel in order to move forward with that. There were assertions to, as a matter of fact, it was even brought to the table. You both were talking to district counsel in the form of, why are we being built twice for the same thing? He was seeking legal counsel, and if he had an opportunity to come before us, would have been able to explain that question that you put forth. And as far as illegal practices, we've heard from Mr. Garland, his position in that, and how things were being done, and how things were corrected with the advice of Dr. Edmondson. But more importantly, I think it's that we emphasize that Dr. Edmondson has always had the intention of well-doing for the district, even through working through his illness, heart condition. Well-intentioned to make sure this district prospered, that our children had everything that they need to make it through the pandemic, worked tirelessly hours, and we've had letters that have been submitted for every person within central office that worked to and reinforce that this person was working to do the district good. And so I think that it is a huge injustice for our children, a big injustice, our community and our teaching staff, the staff that was in central office. It's been a huge thing that needs to be corrected. And I agree with Mr. Bergeron in that our community has spoken to us over and over again about wanting Dr. Edmondson in that seat. And again, going back, in the very beginning, when we went past and removed our last superintendent, our last seated superintendent, we finally came together as a board. And then as things continued to evolve, it was already foresaw. What's being done now is a repeat of what's been done in the past. And it's not fair for our children. Our district is suffering. Our district is going to suffer even more. But it can be corrected. It can be corrected. But again, as I implored the last time I sat at that table, that if you would just listen and understand what our staff wants in order to continue to have the support they need to care for our students. If you just listen, open the opportunity that maybe the person that we hired has been bluntly honest about everything. He's never tried to hide anything. Been bluntly honest about everything. Brought it to us in a way that we had never experienced. Board brief was something new. Opportunity and door open for the entire board
to come in and speak on a one-on-one. If you don't want to come in and speak to me on a one-on-one and ask me questions, we can do it on the phone. We have virtual conversations because I wanted to know what the plans were. I wanted to know how we were moving forward. I wanted to understand the obstacles that our teaching staff was experiencing. And I know other board members took advantage of that as well. And so I say to you, it doesn't look like there's a willingness to even consider what has been stated from the community and how you came into this thing saying it is not about him, and yet here we are about him. Fix it. You have the opportunity to fix it.
I hear you, Mr. Terrell, and here's the dilemma that I feel. I've heard Ms. Wester say many times, bring him back. Let's get the finance plan and let's take care of these things. I've heard you say he already had a plan. I've said, what is the plan? I've never seen it. We don't see finance reports. So there's discrepancy. Is there a plan? There's not a plan. Oh, bring him back and let's create a plan. And
ask him. Nobody said anything about creating. Ask him.
When you
give
have
him
a
an
plan,
opportunity to respond.
okay, but a plan, if somebody has a plan, and as a chief financial officer of a district of 14 findings, a plan is something you communicate. You set measurable objectives. You communicate expectations and make sure that they're being, that is a plan. But we were even given plans by Mr. Sovey that were ignored. And here's my concern, because yes, in theory that could work very well, because I believe that every single board member wants good for this district and wants to work with the superintendent and make this not just status quo, but really like make Romulus Community Schools a place where every single student, each one, has their needs met academically, quality education, that we have equity for all students. I believe that. But here's the problem. Without a plan, with pushback to even setting a meeting to establish goals, with pushback to providing finance reports, with all that pushback, how do we believe that is reasonable? And what concerns me is all of the charges that were laid out, and all of the concerns about, we finally had an experienced superintendent who came in and identified finance problems, who brought in an expert, who was given sound advice and didn't take it, and in spite of being told you're flying blind and understanding the financial trajectory of the district. Your systems, it's a train wreck. You need to be intentionally focused on the sustainability of the district, and all that was ignored. And here we are in September being told by our auditor, your district isn't going to survive long-term or short-term. And so in all of these charges that were laid out, in all the rebuttals, there's not one statement about here's what we can do, here's how we can recoup, here's my idea. Nothing about, good advice ignored. Nothing about working with the board because getting back on track so that we survive. But what the statement closes out with, whatever the decision that is made, which seems to be foregone conclusion, I will likely return as your superintendent. So I will say, see you soon, one way or another. This is about a district, not about a person. How can we reasonably believe we can get a plan and work and make this district sustainable when even now, nothing in that statement addresses finance concerns or plan?
Ms. Piles, you've been seeing the same thing for the last hour. You know what? You don't get it about this community. You don't get what we're on the same page. You four people are not on the same page, and you may have a couple of followers, but the bottom line is this community is supporting this superintendent, is supporting this, and you have the door up, and you won't let us move forward. And that is ridiculous, and that is on you. That is on you.
I
Keep on
agree with you,
repeating.
Mr. Bergeron,
You sit there,
that-
you
that-
sit there
that
and keep on repeating and
I agree
repeating
that
and repeating.
You and community members are supporting Dr. Edmondson, and that is heard. But there are also board members supporting a district and the longevity of it, and that is what we are.
People like myself are supporting this district. It's not necessarily Dr. Edmondson, it's this district. And because he's a part of that district, I'm supporting him. You don't understand that. Now all of a sudden you're a technician, you're a, auditor and, paralegal and
I am
stuff
not,
like that.
Mr.
Debbie.
Bergeron.
The bottom line is you keep on repeating yourself and repeating yourself. Drop it, get to your point and move on. You've been saying the same damn thing for the last 3-4 months.
That's fine then. So if anybody has any further comments relative to the charges or rebuttal, please raise your hand. If not, we have 2 motions and emails that came through, if the board wants to review those. Did anyone have their hand up? I'm sorry, I can't. I thought I saw a hand, but I don't now. Okay, seeing no more comments, then we can bring the discussion to an end. Let me pull email. Is there any motion by the board members? Do board members see those motions in the email?
We're reading.
It's being read, President Piles.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
It's being read. People are reviewing it.
I'm sorry, Ms. Evans.
We're trying to read this.
They're reading the motion,
Okay.
reviewing the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Not to terminate, have to terminate, but must be returned to administrative, so that's the one we want.
Yeah.
Let me see the other one.
The motions that were prepared, that were sent to the board, again, there are 2 of them. One is for termination, one is against termination. In essence, the one would be to say, for the reasons stated in the charges and discussed in the hearing, that the board would vote to terminate. The other is finding that there is not reason for termination and to reinstate Dr. Edmondson. So those are the 2 motions. If there are any needs or suggestions from board members thereafter, or if a desire is done to do something different other than what's in these 2, I can work with the board to prepare that motion as well. But those are the 2 that were prepared.
Thank you, Mr. Schindler.
I believe a couple suggestions have been made to even develop a plan, work with the superintendent on that plan of action for the superintendent to setting benchmarks. It was more than just either disregard or fire.
Understand, Ms. Rowland,
if
if part of my thinking in terms of preparing those motions is that obviously I wanted to get those into the board members' hands. If that is the desire of the board, I'd be happy to put that into a motion. I would want to know ideally the specifics that we would want to have in that motion in terms of what the corrective plan, what the plan of action would be if that was the desire of the board. if that makes sense. That's why I didn't do that in advance, because that would be part of a discussion.
I would like to see on the, if you do in fact vote on terminating this contract and terminating the superintendent, I want to see a pay package on there where you pay out his contract. Okay, you can't do this because then we're going to be making you more money, which obviously you're all for that. But I'm not. I want to keep our money in this community. So anyway, I don't see that package, that in there, but.
We really don't want that.
Pardon?
What we want is.
I agree with Ms. Bergeron.
Right.
So in other words, Mr. Bergeron, what you're saying is instead of, well,
Wouldn't that be part of a settlement?
the problem with doing a pay package through a motion, well, we'd have to pay out the entire contract, I suppose, would be the position. Otherwise, there would still leave open the potential for a lawsuit. And in fact, in this case, there's already been a lawsuit that has been filed, and it wouldn't settle that suit unless it was agreed upon by Dr. Edmondson and his counsel. So it would be difficult to create a solution via motion at this point that would
We've done it before.
without agreement from counsel.
We've done it before.
Well, again, and we've done it before, and usually there would have to be agreement from the other side and from counsel. And so we would have to have that in place before I could recommend it to the board, because otherwise we'd be paying out the money without actually settling the legal issues in place.
Wouldn't that just be a different motion, just to say, to buy out his contract versus the termination?
Correct. I think probably the way we would want to do that, if we were going to move forward with that, would be to direct counsel to work with Dr. Edmondson's counsel to negotiate a buyout package.
Thank you.
So we wouldn't, in other words, there wouldn't be the finality of that. It would have to be a motion for that direction.
For legal
and then
counsel
from
to
there,
work with legal.
there would be later on, there'd be another motion to accept that.
All right.
So this says about our district, and as Mr. Bergeron said, to just keep fishing out hand over fist dollars. I would hope that we would be willing to consider that.
Madam President,
Yes.
I move the minutes of a special meeting of the Board of Romulus Community Schools, County of Wayne, Michigan, held virtually in person today. The resolution against the discharge of superintendent, whereas the Board of Education, having been presented with written charges recommending the termination of Dr. Edmondson on Monday, December 20th, and whereas the Board of Education, having held a hearing on the charges of terminating Superintendent Edmondson on December 27th and continuing on December 29th, and whereas that hearing having been concluded in a public meeting, now therefore be it resolved that the reasons discussed on record in the hearing on the charges that Dr. Edmondson's contract for employment with the Romulus Community Schools not be terminated, and be it further resolved that Dr. Edmondson be returned from administrative leave effective immediately.
Support.
Moved by Ebbets, supported by German.
Wester.
Wester.
Sorry. Floor is open. Okay. Madam Secretary?
Kennard.
Oh, We just lost her.
Evans, no. Terrell?
Yes.
Bergeron?
Yes.
German? German? Piles?
No.
Wester?
Yes.
Kennard? Ms. Kennard, we are voting on.
I'm sorry, Ms. Evans, to interrupt, because I had a connection where you went out. Can you please recount the vote for me, please?
Yes, I'm back. I went out.
Okay, Kennard, we are voting against the termination of Dr. Edmondson.
No.
Ms. Piles, it was Evans, no. Terrell, yes. Bergeron, yes. Ms. German, are you on? She's not. Piles, no. Wester, yes. 3-3.
So motion failed. I'm sorry, I'm,
The motion failed.
okay. My connection is, I'm getting some feedback. Am I able to be heard?
You are?
Yes, we hear you.
Ms. German said that she is trying to reconnect also.
I'm still connected, but I think it's spotty. I'm gonna log out and right back on.
Oh boy, here we go with this again. Yeah, it reminds me of September. Let's turn on, I know, yeah. Let's go back. Let's go. Come on. Let me get a hold of you. I'll call you. It's ridiculous. You're spending taxpayers' money. You know that taxpayers' money. You don't care.
I'm
It's
not doing
going to
anything
the
different,
kids.
Mr.
It's not
Bergeron.
going to the kids. This is ridiculous.
Can I be heard?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Ms. German, are you
Mr.
back on?
Brown? Hang on.
Okay, next one,
Hang
resolution.
on 1 minute. Hang on 1 minute, please.
Oh, let's call her, huh? It's ridiculous.
Well, we got legal on now to see.
Oh, yeah. See, Mr. Lawyer, how your clients are?
Yeah, Ms. Sherman, I can hear you. Can you connect back to the meeting?
I'm trying to now.
Okay, she's trying to connect now.
Oh, yeah.
I have you on my
She's
speaker, but
connected. Can you now hear Ms. German? Can you hear us?
It looks as though she's connecting again.
There she is.
Ms. Sherman, are you able to hear?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
so, did Ms. German vote? Okay.
No, that motion failed,
Okay, so
3-3.
the motion, Ms. Evans made a motion to not terminate and return the superintendent, and the motion failed 3-3.
So the next motion is resolution for the discharge of superintendent. Whereas the Board of Education, having been presented with charges recommending the termination of Dr. Benjamin Edmondson on Monday, December 20th, and whereas the Board of Education, having held a hearing on the charges to terminate Superintendent Edmondson on December 27th and continuing on December 29th, 2021, and whereas the hearing having been concluded in a public meeting, and now therefore be it resolved that for the reason presented in the charges and discussed on the record in the hearing on the charges that Dr. Edmondson's contract for employment with the Romulus Community Schools be terminated for reasons that are not arbitrary or capricious.
Yeah, right. I'd be ashamed of you.
Is there support?
Moved by Evans. Is there support? I support.
Sure you do.
Any discussion?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so moved by Evans, supported by Piles for the termination for the reasons stated in the charges and discussed in our meetings. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Terrell?
No.
Kennard?
Yes.
Wester?
No.
Evans, yes. Piles?
Yes.
I'm sorry? Piles?
Yes.
Ridiculous.
German?
Yes.
Bergeron?
No.
And nobody took heed to certain things
Motion.
you guys
4-3.
really should not have been voting on.
Motion carries for the termination
Shouldn't have been
of
voting
the
on it anyway.
superintendent.
You guys are ready for a lawsuit.
Um,
You don't care, do you? It ain't your money.
Don't
I would
care.
like to thank the board members and
You do not
council
care about our students and our
and Dr.
district.
Edmondson
at all.
for the time spent in the discussion, the preparation
They will
of
see you in
documents.
court.
Who's she talking to?
No, we are at communications from the public. Ms. Evans, do you have forms?
I do not have any. Are there any forms to be turned in?
There's a
Just one
form.
Is
moment.
there-
There's a
one.
I'm
form.
sorry.
It's coming.
I'm sorry, I'm unable to hear.
There is a
one.
form coming.
Get your ass back out of here. You got nothing to do with this.
Point of order?
Point of order. You get the security
State
guard
your
out of
point.
here. I have a right to be here. Don't be sitting here looking at me like some dumbass.
Mr. Bergeron, you do not have a right to disrupt the
What you
meeting
just
and
did to
yell
this
out of turn.
community hurt this community.
It's a doggone shame. Oh, they voted him out, Darice.
Nickel-dime security
Okay.
guards.
Okay.
You know,
The rent-a-cops.
You know what? Okay, board.
Ridiculous.
We can disagree. We
Ms.
can
Piles,
even
we're in
feel
public
strong
comment.
emotion. But we can still maintain order and be respectful to one another. Miss Evans, do you have?
We have one, Ms. Rita Hampton.
Okay,
I have one thing, I don't have one thing, I have many things to say, but as you know, I get confused because I wanna say so many things, but then that doggone alarm will go off. One thing the lawyer, Dr. Edmondson said about that resolution that happened on September 27th, I heard from many people that were left in the administration building, that there was a 5-hour meeting going on with Evans, McNatt, Dixon, the lawyer, and of course Debbie Kyle. They were in there for 5 hours.
And it was supposed to be independent.
And I'm sure that everybody heard that. My recall that, hey, Evans, Kennard, and Piles are recalled. Do we have our job cut out for you? That's what I want to hear.
Yep.
Let's do this. Right. And then bring him back. That's right. Let's do this. Right. Because there's no respect for you. She lies. Amen. She's a pathological liar.
Amen.
She switches things around and flips. Yeah. When you try, you lie.
That's your shuffle paper.
Look at all the water. Look at the face. She's a liar. Does she really think that she's going to be able to sit there and carry on business as usual to 2024? If she does, we got problems. Everybody, look on Facebook. She doesn't listen to the community. She doesn't care. Her angriness and her vendetta is against Dr. Ben because he wouldn't carry her purse or her coat. Every citizen that I watched and rewatched, they came and said, why are you micromanaging Dr. Ben? I watched all the virtual meetings that I could attend prior to his coming, and then when he left, I had to do it again, so my mind would be right, so my hands could be clean. My hands are clean, theirs are not. Somebody say, Grandma say, shake that tree, something's gonna come out. I'm gonna shake that tree. Light came around with light. You hire a poor interim superintendent that's got a sketchy background. Dr. Ben made the mistake of bringing him here, trying to do a facade. Then he hires Dixon that's been, that was just uncalled for. He's have a sketchy background. Check it out. And then you hire goons. Where's the respect for the community?
None. Zero.
Why would you hire iron guards to come into our district when the law says drugs, no drugs? I
Your time is up, Miss. Your time is up.
Time. Ms.
Your
Hampton,
time is up. Your time is up.
No, Ms. Hampton, you are being asked to stop
You
speaking.
are
Your
being
3
asked
minutes
to
is up.
stop.
I'm not gonna stop.
That's your first warning.
That's your second warning. I'm not stopping.
Ms.
Ms.
Hampton,
Hampton,
your
your
time
time
is
is
up.
up.
Please exit the microphone.
You asked her why she can't take minutes.
That's your
Ms.
second warning,
Hampton,
Ms.
your time
Hampton.
is up. Please step away from the mic.
Practicing to take minutes.
Ms. Hampton.
We never see our minutes. We never
Ms.
see our
Hampton,
minutes.
this is your third warning. You are to be escorted off of the property.
Ms. Hampton, you need to leave the building, please.
Please leave the building.
We got power now.
Got
Kick
power.
somebody out, yeah.
Do we have any more public comment?
Mr. Green?
Turn the mic on, Doris.
Again,
Is the mic on?
Again, I say to the Romulus residents, we're going to be throwing recall parties at different locations throughout the city. We've already got the legislation passed, so only thing we're looking for now is to let these these three do their appeals. Once their appeals are denied, I will personally put it on my page and every other page out here. We're going to get this district back, and we're going to do the right thing by our students. It's not about you, Debbie Pyle, Susan Evans, Judy Kennard, and the other one. It ain't about y'all. And if I ever get on this board, my first duty would be to get rid of Ms. German for the comments you made derogatory towards our students and our city. You know, and then the next thing I want to address is the fact that you let a guy come in here who has a standing record of being terminated or resigning from every other positions that he's ever been in, and somebody throws him a bone to come in while he's on vacation or on medical leave, throws him a bone, and then he comes in and pulls the wool over everybody's eyes. It's not it was already planned. He was already planned, but that's okay. That's okay. This is a plan. Know it and understand it. 3,000 signatures, no problem.
Are there any more comments to be turned in? That's it, Ms. Piles, President Piles.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. We are at board member comments. Mr. Bergeron?
I've already told you my comments. I have no respect for you and your forum. Zero. Because you don't care for this community. You don't understand it. You think you're a psychiatrist. You think you're a psychologist and a CPA. You're not. You're nothing. You're zero.
Ms. Wester?
This is very disheartening. Our community spoke. No one said anything about our kids. No one said anything. I say that every week. Our kids are suffering. We're losing staff left and right. But why? No one wants to answer the question, why? You're not looking at the resignation letters as to why. These personal egos, personal reasons, what you said, oh, it has nothing to do with Dr. Ben. You knew this, you knew what you were going to do. And it really, really hurt. You have done this district a disservice. A disservice, and it's a slap. Our teachers have stood up here and said they went arm in arm with a lot of you to get you elected. Now they're going to go arm in arm to get you up out of here. You didn't even listen to Dr. Ben's attorney who said, you want to do things decent and in order with corrective action plans on everybody else, but you don't want to give him a chance to fix this that he inherited? You talk about, oh, well, we never got this, we never got that. But you never, ever brought it to the board to make it to, oh, Dr. E, we need this in that. You didn't. You knew what you were doing all along when you got in this position. When Mr. Martell was off on sabbatical, you started your journey. And you know, payback, God don't like ugly at all. Karma. And when it's time to go for the lawsuit, because you know it's going to happen, I will be on the defense.
Ms. Evans?
I don't have anything.
I'm sorry, Ms. Evans, I wasn't able to hear you.
I don't have anything.
Is anyone still online? No.
Move to adjourn.
I know that we have a very,
President Piles, I move to adjourn.
I was,
Okay.
I'm sorry. I know that we have a divided board, district, and community. And in spite of that, we still have a duty to work together and to serve. And if you want to talk about who cares about students, why are you walking away from the table? That shows total apathy, attitude, and a failure to consider facts and work. You worship a person instead of protect and safeguard a district, and that is most shameful. Ms. Evans, thank you for remaining. Motion to adjourn. Well, I didn't have board member comment, so your motion to adjourn was out of order. Ms. Evans?
Yes.
So did you call my name to vote for adjournment? Because we only have 4 board members remaining.
Mr. Bergeron said yes. Wester said yes. I'm yes.
I didn't hear my name called.
Piles?
Yes, meeting
Thank you.
adjourned at 1:58 p.m. Thank you.